Good afternoon. 12:35 p.m. on Friday. Getting over a little coffee coldy, taking meds, antibiotics, little steroid here and there. Getting better though. About 87.5%. Slowly climbing to the magic 90%. Well, getting on to a little bit of reality. Let's take a look at let's hit this one. Yes. We're looking at the live radar. Live 6-minute delay live. And I can manipulate this with my fingers because it's on my trusty iPad. It is a remnants of one that threatened the east coast of Florida. Which, that's history. But we have, coming off the coast of Africa, the satellite images. It's kind of amazing, isn't it? I'm letting the satellite images refresh. Even though it's 6 minutes delayed or 3 minutes delayed now, you can see all this stuff right here. All that's going to turn into nastiness. And we watch the tropical waves move off the coast of Africa. And everything that appears in this orangish oval, which you can barely see. 60% of that will turn into something not good. And then as we move across the Great Atlantic, and we move into this area, there's tropical disturbances right here in South Florida. Right over the Bahamas, just north of Cuba. And we're looking for, right now there's strong winds coming off the Atlantic Ocean from east to west. 22-mile-an-hour winds adjacent to about Orlando. You can see that right there, the Space Coast. A lot of lightning over the Bahamas, and we're waiting to see if any of that starts to rotate. If it's going to rotate, it'll probably start cyclonic activity towards the south end of this little cluster. It may just end up being torrential rains and just hang there on or off the coast. So that's the latest from the weather. You got some activity over here on the other side of the Yucatan Peninsula. It's a very active Atlantic basin right now. Even the Gulf of America You can see all the lightning that's going on in the middle there. It's hard to tell which direction that's going to take. It seems to be moving closer and closer to New Orleans. The one thing I remember when we lived in Tampa is that the three most highest relative humidity places in the Northern Hemisphere is Houston, Texas, New Orleans, Louisiana, and Tampa, Florida. The three highest relative humidity, the highest number of lightning strikes, you name it. Whew. There we go. There's Jimmy over here. So looking through favorites. There we go. So here's our favorite here is today's date. We just have one of those. Gotta put my eyes on. Yeah. So for some reason or other, the White House has withdrawn E.J. Antoni's nomination to run the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Someone dug up something in his background and said, hold on a minute. Then they started beating on the White House team and they pulled his nomination. Yeah, so haven't heard any follow up on that. Just going through some of the news stories. How long do EV batteries really last? Well, I can tell you we are on our second Tesla. It was, I don't know whether they are the top, but they're near the top, if not the top of, the hit parade as far as battery lasting and all that. But we're on our second one. So we're about 4.5 years into Tesla driving, which is I must admit it was 4.5 years ago. It was a little big of a challenge, more of a challenge than it is today. 4.5 years ago was a lifetime in an electric vehicle. And I was mostly concerned is, how do you fill the sucker up? Who's got
It's 12:45.
And particularly we're living in a high-rise structure here where are you going to plug it in? And oh my God. Now they have supercharger stations all over the place, but they're like, there are 150,000 gas stations across the United States, Northern Hemisphere, and they're like 20,000 electric receptacles, Tesla superstation. Well, 20,000 is not the same as 150,000. But when you get right down to it, all the superchargers have been very careful, locations have been very carefully planned, on Turnpike and I-95 and I this and I that. And so, you're going to go out of town, so to speak, usually get on a highway. And they've got these charging locations, every 50 miles up the road. Now, the nice thing about, if you have access to a plug in your garage, every time you leave in the morning, you got a full tank. Full tank of electricity is, roughly 250, 60, 70 miles, 230, 40, 50, 60, 70, depending on what car you got and whether it's a long range battery or a commuter range battery, which means 200 miles or less. Long range battery up to 300. For a premium car is up to 400 miles of range. So let's take our case, which is a 300-mile range battery. All right. Now, they don't want you to use the top 10%. So that knocks off 30 miles. And they don't want you to, and you don't want to use the bottom 15%. You don't want to run into the garage running on vapors, so to speak. So that's 25, 30% of the battery that you really, you can they say you can fill it up all the way and you can run it all the way down, or down to 5%. So, for a 300-mile battery, you only got about 250 miles worth of what I call real range. Because the other part of the range, they say, well, you can do it, but we'd rather you didn't do it, and then you figure in a battery, I don't want to overstress the battery, so you get conservative. And so instead of a 300-mile range battery, you got a 240-mile range battery. Well, still 240 miles of range is plenty to get around any daily driving. That's a lot of driving, 240 miles of real range in any particular day. Because remember, you're going to go back to your garage and plug in. Because every morning you're going to leave with 250 miles of range. So by the time you go to work and come back and maybe you use 75 miles of that 240, you plug in overnight, fills it back up in a couple hours, sits there plugged in overnight, which they recommend. And you got plenty of energy to get on your next day. Now, if you live in Boca Raton and work in Coral Gables, so that'd be like 100-mile, roughly 100-mile round trip. So 250-mile range, you get down to 150 miles by the time you park your car back in your garage. So you charge up, 100 miles overnight. And a 230 volt, 36 amp circuit will charge it up around 25 miles per hour. 25 miles of range per hour plugged in, which means in 4 hours, you got 100 miles of range put back in your tank. I use the word tank instead of battery. Try to get everyone out of the habit of thinking about what kind of energy it is. Energy is energy. Just electric energy is a lot cleaner so that you don't have soot coming out of the back end of your cars all over your neighborhoods and so forth. The electric plants that produce electricity, they have all kinds of soot devices, all centralized over the smokestacks, in the various electric generation facilities around the country. Assuming you're not, we have a certain amount of nuclear energy in Florida. We should have more, but we don't. Because the EPA and all this stuff and the ABCs, they made it impossible to get nuclear permits to build them. Maybe with this administration, they can start a bunch of these nuclear power plants around the country before the liberals get back in power. That's possible. It takes about 8 years to build a power plant. It could take 10 years to get it permitted. But with the current administration, permitting would probably take a year instead of 8. And they'd probably build them in 8 years instead of 10, But you got to start a plant every, I remember President Carter, who was big into this, saying, I want to start a nuclear power plant every year. If we start one every year, in the next 30 years, we'll have 30 more nuclear power plants. Well, it never happened. And in the meantime, what looked like a nuclear blast was really a refinery explosion around somewhere in LA. We don't have a lot of refining capacity for hydrocarbons, oil refineries to produce gasoline and number 2 jet fuel for our airplanes, jet airplanes. So when one of those goes now, it'll take 3 years to clean it up and rebuild it. So that puts a bigger reliance on that belt around from Louisiana to Houston, those refineries. Yeah. Solar is, Tesla's big into, renewables, like solar, electric, batteries, solar cells. Well, they are reinstituting the bringing back the leasing of solar panels, which I would highly recommend, because that way you're not stuck with ownership of really old technology. You buy it, you got it. If you lease it, at the end of the lease term, get them replaced with new improved solar cells. And the solar cell technology has enhanced quite a bit. Whereas not many years ago, you were considered very lucky to get 10% of solar energy being converted to some form of electric energy. Now it's up, like 25, 30%, which is 3 times what it was, let's say 8 years ago. So if you get 300% more electricity to get the same amount of power, you can have 1/3 the number of cells on your roof. If your roof is going to be loused up, you might as well fill the roof, in my opinion. Assuming the lease rates are good, which they should be. To go half a roof just because you can. Build the roof up, like what we're seeing here on the display. So that, how come that doesn't seem. Is my overhead light too bright? What's going on here? Yeah. Okay. Well, I noticed that there was an app on the App Store with iPhones, with iOS devices, that would pinpoint where ICE agents are. That app has been yanked down. How the hell can an app like that go up? What's going on? Is Apple getting too big for their britches? Jeez, that's nuts. Anyway, so that has been relieved. And now there is no more app that can dictate where ICE agents are so that the bad guys can hide around the corners. All right, this is Hamas has not responded. Well, they've sort of responded to President Trump's 20-point plan how to stop this Israeli-Hamas conflict in the Gaza. And Hamas is saying, well, we have a couple of modifications. Trump says, no, just take it or leave it, buddy. All the Arab nations surrounding this whole area have approved it. Israel has approved it. Now it's your turn. Approve it or watch out for the consequences. That's what that picture is. And let's see if we can. I was looking at these two maps, and the nuances are so. I don't see any nuance changes. Looks like the same map repeated. Yeah. So this is the Gaza Strip, right smack in the middle of Israel. Jeez. And the blue line there is where the Israeli Defense Force currently has its line of debarkation that they have filtered through Gaza and snipped it out of all the bad guys and removed all the citizenry. The yellow line would be the initial withdrawal according to the 20-point plan and the release of hostages. And then the red line would be the second line of withdrawal when the Israeli Defense Force mobilized first, becomes mobilized per the standards set by the Trump plan. And then the third, and then as that occurs, then you got the third withdrawal of the security buffer zone in the hash marked blue area. And that'd be the end of it.
It's 1:00.
But you can't end it until you start it. So we've got Trump has given them till Sunday. I don't know whether that's Sunday Eastern Eastern Daylight Time or what. It's probably Sunday Washington time. I don't know. It really is ahead of us at times, so that would give them the most amount of time if they used Eastern Standard Time. Well, as you may know, there's a company called DJI. And there's a DJI Neo number 2, one of the 3 exciting new DJI upgrades ready for a November release. And these drones keep on getting smaller and lighter with better cameras. A lot of them are under 250 grams, which the FAA declared as the weight under which makes the device so light that you don't need any licensing. Over 250 grams, you need some sort of drone pilot training. Also, of course, in the age of miniaturization, DJI is manufacturing these things that are feather light, including batteries, to keep under that 249 gram limit. I have one in a little case down there. Yeah, it's amazing. You just toss it over the side of my balcony and whoosh, takes off into the air. Takes beautiful photographs. Silent movies or photographs. Movies are fun because it feels like you're flying an airplane. And if you get the special goggles, which are a couple $100, the goggles looks right through the cameras in the front of the drone, so you feel like you're in the cockpit of the drone. And you go up, and oh my God, it's almost like you get seasick. This thing and you sways left and right, and oh my God. Yeah. There's William and Harry. William is on the right. He is the eminent new king. And Harry is the younger brother. You know, their mother was Princess Diane, of course. So when they were 6, 7, 8, 9, they had a pretty rough upbringing. Their mother being crushed in a French tunnel, likely on purpose, because she was dating an Arab. And the royal family couldn't stand that. So someone, this is Jimmy only thinking, along with a million other people, that they had to take her out, or him out. There's the still image as of roughly 9 this morning. That little blue dot right there is the location of yours truly. Yeah, you can barely see the edge of the state of Florida since there's so much cloud, wind direction stuff. But we're starting to feel the wind pressure. There's a lot of wind, a lot of turbulence. And you got the stuff moving up this way, and you got that stuff moving down that way. And then you got a whole bunch. Look at all this stuff following in behind. You know, as the Hurricane Umberto and so forth track off to the northeast, sucking up a lot of moisture and creating a lot of turbulence. There it is. I show the cities here so you can get an idea of the outline of 'Tim Miller joins Nicole Wallace on MSNBC's Dateline. Oh, yeah, with their 600,000 viewers. Howard Lutnick is between them in the red circle. Talking about the government shutdown and who's doing what to who. This airplane is becoming the largest beast in Air Force current matters of flying around. And styled after the AC-130. And as a warship, it had machine, 30 round per second, 50 millimeter shells coming out of both sides of that. But as a transport plane, they've removed those armaments and make ready for massive troop and equipment deployments around the world as necessary. So this would be the C5, I guess, will be retired. That's coming on to 40 years old. This is a slightly newer one, but smaller. I had a neighbor. My neighbor in Tampa was a C5 pilot. He was about 5 foot tall. He climbs up. It's like a 30-foot ladder to get in the cockpit of this thing. And he's like a small person, but apparently well trained. Nice man. This is, 1985 story, so it's a long time ago. Former Labor Secretary Robert Reich thinks one particular pressure will eventually force President Donald Trump's hand to cave in on the government shutdown, which has to do with air traffic controllers. Now, come on. Yeah, that's a brilliant statement. He's been so wrong so often. Jeez. He was a Bill Clinton cabinet secretary of yesteryear, and I think he needs more vitamins. Yeah. Well, the latest news, with this is a mixed bag of news here, is, with the new, iPhone 17. Let's see if we can get, there we go. Here's my iPhone 17. This shows we've been on the air for 35 minutes and 22 seconds. It looks strikingly similar to the 16, from an exterior experience, except the window, the little bulge, instead of it going halfway around the back corner, it goes all the way across the top. They've moved the flash over here, and they moved this LiDAR sensor over here. And there's a little microphone dot right there also. Other than that, the phone is exterior dimension-wise, is, I think, pretty much identical. So I'll put him back on his little cradle there. So that's the iPhone 17. But the cameras, everything is faster, slicker. The processors run at 130% faster speed, draw less electricity. The battery lasts, a full day. The companion Apple Watch runs 42 hours instead of 18 hours. That's big because, let me take my watch off. And I'm going to plug it into the charger here. Yes, I charged it last night, and I can see, you can see, it's got a 75% ring around with the level of charge of it. So I can sleep all night with the phone on, and it takes all my biometric information and tells you how well you slept last night, and it scores it. Let's see if I can show you some of that. Yeah, here we go. Here's some biometric results I sent out to my immediate family yesterday. My blood oxygen was the latest 97%, which is good for Jimmy. Blood glucose at 169, which is within the green range, between 85 and 185. This was right after lunch, so that's why it's slightly elevated. Vitals, all metrics in range. Breathing disturbances, none. Considering I just got over a flu of some kind, I was coughing my brains out. No, nothing elevated in breathing disturbances. It's a good thing. Wrist temperature. Apple is very conservative when it comes to giving out readings. So instead of the watch telling you what your temperature is, it tells you that you're 0.37 degrees Fahrenheit above the baseline. Now you have to wear the watch a whole week before, so that it calculates a baseline. And then after a week, it starts to tell you whether you're above or below your baseline. So that's why you don't see an actual temperature of 98.77 or 83. It tells you your 30s. You're about somewhere between a half and a quarter point above your baseline, which, you can walk fast up and down the hallway and that'll go up. Yeah. Respiratory rate as of 6:27 a.m. Sleeping score. So, this is a good one. There's 3 different, your REM sleep, your sleep, that sleep, 3 different kinds of sleep levels. And it scores based on how important it is for you and your age bracket and length of time in each of these 3 different brackets. And scoring high at 76 points. Today means yesterday. So that's, I mean, this is all good stuff. This person tested Barry at ZDNet. Tested the, you see showing you the elevated, whoops, excuse me, add that back in. Oh, switch cameras. Swap cameras. I'm tricking the my Ecamm Live software that produces this broadcast. Software package on my MacBook Pro. I have a camera up here, and I plugged in my iPad into one of the camera ports of the software. So it thinks it's a camera, but it's actually an iPad. How cool is that? But anyway, you see this elevated platform where the camera modules are. It stretches all the way across the back of the phone. Whereas before, it only covered half of the corner of the top part of the phone. The flash was moved over there and the LiDAR was moved underneath. So you had like a little module of cameras and so forth. You have the top camera, you got the normal lens, a wide angle lens. That one is the telephoto lens. This white dot is the flash, and this dark opening is the LiDAR, which is a laser array that gets sprayed out to measure distances of objects away from the phone. I use that feature to measure how large a TV, a big screen TV, would fit on our wall. And, you had the various TV dimensions of, 55 inches, 65 inches, 75 inches, I guess, and 85 inches. So you could, with your fingers, you could pinch and reverse pinch to set your diagonal measure, and a little ruler will come up. And it's really quite amazing. Yeah. So I picked the 85-inch TV because it fit perfectly. It's like a theater screen in our living room, dining room, family room, large area that we have. That's the living room, dining room. And it's nice because from the dining room table, you can look right straight across the room into the TV and watch a football game while you're eating chicken wings. Anyway, so the iPhone 17 is apparently selling at above what they thought. They thought it would be about 84 million units, and it's over 90 million units for these for the second half of 25. So they'll be increasing production for the first half of 26 because of that. Yeah, I mean, it's huge increases in the software for the cameras, being a camera guy, I've checked out a lot of the software improvements, the video quality, and the fact that you can record at this whole sucker 4K video, at 60 frames a second. I mean, only the highest end um, digital SLRs were able to do that, and when they did, it produced a pretty good amount of heat. Camera handles it perfectly. The little iPhone. I can take pictures of the moon. The zoom lens is increased, from 5x to 8x, which is, a 60% increase in focal length, all in the same cabinet container. Special duo prism, which I can't begin to describe optically on what that means exactly. And the imagers on each camera now is 3 main cameras. And each one has a 45 million pixel imager behind the lens system. So you have 3 45 million pixel cameras, all contained in this one iPhone container. So it's, and the computer technology inside the device is, greater than all the computers that was associated with this shuttle space program, for God's sakes, all inside the cabinet of an iPhone. And it runs on a battery that lasts all day long. Whereas when I had a computer system 40 years ago, the power cord was larger than the diameter of my arm. And it had a special air conditioning in the room to keep it under 68 degrees Fahrenheit, or else the computer would overheat. $250,000 installation. And the iPhone is 20 times more capable than that $250,000 installation in my office. Fort Lauderdale, Cypress Creek Road. So, technology marches on. And I read in a booklet somewhere that the computing power in the Apple Watch, in current year's Apple Watch, has twice the capacity from all the computers in NASA and in the shuttle space program combined. Only equals half of the capacity of the Apple Watch. Which, I mean, it's hard, the microelectronics and the optimizations of the circuits and the use of power. It's just amazing. Next year, Apple is supposed to be releasing a folding phone. And, flip goes this way, folding is this way. You fold a folder this way. So since they say folding, that means that, imagine the iPhone that I just showed you opening up this way to produce something that would be similar to a small, an iPad mini. So you end up with a 6.9-inch screen for a phone. But if you open up all the way, you end up with almost a 9-inch diagonal screen. iPad. So you could open it up and you have all this additional real estate for, doing things on the internet, reading a book or whatever. Um, as opposed to, an iPhone where, you have your icons and all that. Now you can go on the internet, you know, as I often do on the, but it's different. Um, you search the web on different topics. Your calendar, things like that. Here's my car. Let's see. Around 230 miles of range, which you can barely see. Let's see if we can look it up here. There it is. Now you can see it. I got this iPad logged in as a driver of the car. So if my phone went battery dead or the phone got stolen or I lost the phone, as long as I had my iPad, I could get in the car and drive the car because I'd have my iPad with me. A little backup system. My watch the same way. I can run the car from my watch. As you can see, there's 10,493 miles. You can tell the software version that's loaded in the computer. And the serial number of the car, 249555. We just got it back from service because the computer, we had compute problems. It didn't know where it was. They put a new computer board in there. And took about 6 days, probably 5 days. Took us a day to react. The fact that it was done, they gave us a loaner. It was supposed to be in for like 1 day. They cleaned this, cleaned that, and get it up to where it needed to be, and they found out. Oops. So they had to keep it and put a new, before they put a new computer board in there. You can be sure that's off warranty. That'd be a $6,000 item for sure. In warranty. So they replaced the rear camera for some reason, and they replaced the main car computer. It's funny, even with the main car computer down, the car still drove because they have like a separate actuator module to run the brakes. And then that modulator plugs into the car computer. And they have a actuator module that controls the steering. And that plugs into the computer. And then they have another actuator module that controls the accelerator and the brakes. That plugs into the car computer. So even if the car computer completely dies, you have an additional redundancy. Now the cameras don't work, and the navigator doesn't work. and you can't see your car on the map, so to speak, out. But you can still drive the car, and get it to service, full speed ahead and this and that. But now you have to look out mirrors instead of, when you've driven a car for 4 or 5 years using the camera system that they have, which is really, almost irreplaceable. Because when you turn on your turn signal, there's, your left-hand turn signal, for example, there's two sets of cameras. There's a pair of two cameras that look up and down the whole side of your car, overlapping views. So you can see if there's anything in, there is no blind spot. Right-hand signal, same way. You don't have to turn your head. You turn on that right-hand signal, and it lights up these two cameras on the right side, so you can see if there's anything near you that would interfere with you wanting to change lanes or make a turn. And if there is something that the system perceives as being too close to you, the edge of the camera view that you see on the display turns red, cautioning you, don't stay put until set up. And same thing, left, right, back up, same. You want to go back up, and you see something that's, in a wide angle lens that looks like it's a good distance away, but if it's too close, a red, fuzzy red area shows up on the bottom of the camera view saying, don't back up until that person gets out of the way of the back of your car before they go splat. Yeah. Same thing in the front. Frontal camera. It'll actually stop itself. I don't think you can run over something. There's an automatic braking system that prevents that. So disgraced hip-hop icon Sean Diddy Combs is so confident he'll be released from jail based on time served. He has already booked speaking engagements for next week. That's pretty. He's sentenced. I don't know if he's sentenced already. The shocking revelation came as prosecutors began opening arguments in Manhattan. Pressing their case of bad boy record founder should be sent to prison for more than 11 years. So he's convicted, and now the judge is sentencing him today, or already has. Slime ball. So what happened? People wait to hear. He was convicted of 2 prostitution counts. but he was acquitted on sex trafficking. Whatever the hell the difference in those two things are. 2-month trial, baby oil drenched, drug fueled marathon sexual adventures. Notorious pig, according to the New York Post. Victims testify. These girls under armed guard testified against him. I'm speed reading this article, trying to figure out if they haven't said anything yet. And if not, when are they going to say what's going on? Oh, well. Not in that article, which was written last night, so yeah. Go back to my photo album, which reminds me of what I want to talk about. So the Tesla Model Y is now going to be able to support bi-directional charging, meaning that it can take a charge from another car, or it can produce a charge for another car. Either way, it didn't say whether you could. There was a thought, and it may be, this just came out, where you could plug your car into your electrical system. You know, if you had the wall, a battery circuitry for your house. There's the name of that escapes me. Where you can plug your car into that, and in other words, run your house off your car battery. Since the car battery has, 75,000 watts, your house running full blast, all your lights on, your air conditioning on, ceiling fans, you name it, produce about 9,000 watts a day, consuming, 8 or 9,000 watts. Let's just say 8. So if you got an 80 kilowatt battery, you can run your house off your car battery for 10 days, for a hurricane outage, considering that's your wall system, where you got a bunch of, which you got about 40 kilowatts of batteries, that get charged from your solar cells up on your roof. So if you have your car in the driveway, in the garage, you can plug it in. And instead of having generators and all this stuff, off the wall unit and your car battery, you've got 12, 14 days worth of energy to run your house comfortably, which is more than enough time to clear clear hurricane damage. Go get yourself built. And when a hurricane passes through, the sun comes out. And that would tend to recharge your wall unit in your garage. And from there, it would passes through, it gets bright and sunny and hot. Yeah, like the next day. Holy mackerel. Feel like you're in a big sauna bath. So even though the energy grid might be down, your house will run off the battery installation in your garage, running off the solar cells. And any excess energy will then go back into your car battery. So by the time they clear the streets, your battery is full, your house batteries are full, and even if you're totally off the grid, there is a system, circuitry, that you can sell excess energy right back into FPNL and get a credit on your electric bill from the energy that it takes from your house supply if you have excess energy. Yep, the Democrats shut down the government. The House Speaker threw him a curveball by getting a clean bill, extending everything exactly the way it is, so they can negotiate all these little fine lines over the next days until November. And the Senate voted no. So they basically pulled the plug on all these government expenses. God, in Brooklyn, there was a 20-story building that the whole side of the building fell off. Apparently, there's some kind of a supplement you can take to supercharge your brain. See, get a hold of some of those. Might as well be supercharged, right? What the heck? White House freezes $18 billion in New York City infrastructure funding. You betcha. And here's the notice of certain government facilities being closed 2 days ago. I paid my rent. That's what that is. You're James. Well, the internet, man. Just pay your bills. Tried to use Zelle. That didn't work. I got a problem with Zelle. So I'm handwriting checks and doing check deposits. I've been doing Zelle for years, and all of a sudden they turned me off. Never had a fact check or anything. Just boom, all of a sudden it stopped working. This is a new Model Y. A more affordable model has shown up and been discovered. And the way they can tell, aside from other things, is to see the wheel, there are 18-inch rims, which I wish I had on my car. Instead of 19-inch rims, I want all that rubber. That's what helps to smooth out the ride. Plus, when you hit a bump, you don't collapse the tire. These 19 and 22-inch tires, as soon as you hit a little tiny pothole, the whole tire goes flat because there's not enough rubber to absorb, the movement. What's going on? Here we go. I was just looking, we're 1 hour into this delayed broadcast. Well, I'm overcoming my maladies. Red Hat. Red Hat is one of these companies that other companies hire to watch out for cyber crime. And they just announced that they got attacked. Oh, God. The hackers claim they have stolen 800 customer engagement records. Oh, God. That's pretty bad when the anti-hacker firm gets hacked. You know. That's why I brought it to your attention. I mean, this is a company that charges big bucks for $100 billion and up companies that engage people like this. You got Black Hat, Red Hat, and they got hacked themselves. Whew. Big old article about that. Department of Energy cancels billions in funding in blue state areas, for sure. That's when all the politics comes in. Well, hey, they shut down the government, so now the White House staff has the ability to cut out more waste and abuse. That the Elon Musk generation of Doge have identified, but couldn't deal with, because but for a government shutdown, you couldn't just cancel thousands of people in useless areas. They got to give them, according to federal regulations, you got to give them 60 days notice. But still, at the end of 60 days, you're gone. And there's no reassignment necessarily provided. You get the standard gift package and you're out. And the White House officials are basically saying, sign up on our deal and get the government back open again, or we're going to start knocking out the people in your districts. So here's an article about Netflix and The Diplomat Season 3. If you haven't watched The Diplomat and you have any political, it's all based, in London, let's say. It has to do with this lady right in the middle, who is the ambassador to England, the U.S. ambassador to England. And this is her husband, and he was the former ambassador. So you got a husband and wife team that are married, and he was the former, and she's the current. So you got all kinds of stress in there. This is I didn't believe this black lady is the executive assistant to the vice president of the United States. She's on and off the phone during the show. But it's really, well, they had season 1, season 2. Now they're coming out with season 3. We watched season 2 again in preparation for season 3. It took them a couple of years to put it together. So October 16th. So in 13 days will be the airing of season 3. I think they air the whole. I don't think you have to watch it 1 week at a time. I forget. Or whether the whole season comes out in one blast. Which means that in about two or 3 weekends, you wiped out season 3. Yeah. With this show, it centers around Kate, who has been newly appointed in her role. Her husband, Hal Weiler, is also a key player in the show. And he was the former U.S. ambassador to Lebanon. And is struggling with his lack of international diplomacy. Because he's not an ambassador anymore for some reason. Even started to affect their marriage, yeah. Season 3 picks up in the aftermath of the president's stolen sudden death. That's pretty amazing. Right at the end of the show, Kate's husband gets on the phone. Hal gets on the phone with the now president, not our, show president. And he gets him so upset about whatever, the president has a heart attack right on the phone. Meanwhile, his wife is out on the lawns in front of, the ambassador's regal house or ambassador building. And they're like 20 or 30 men are running out to swarm around Kate and the current vice president, who has just been elevated to president because the president just had a heart attack. Oh, God. I mean, how the script writers go on with this. Emily in Paris, on a lighthearted. This is season 5. My God. This comes out streaming on Netflix starting November 26th. Season 5. Emily Goes to Paris. That's a nice show. As opposed to this hard-hitting political drama with cars blowing up and espionage. There's my iOS 26 story. Yeah, the software, they renamed it based on the number of times they revised it, as opposed to the calendar years, like, yeah, or maybe it's the 2026 version. But instead of the 8th revision, it's the 2026 version. That's probably what it is. So it just came out. It'll be effective with upgrades over the year 2020. And then next year it'll be 2027, would be my proposition. I think I read somewhere where they describe the new nomenclature for the software. But it was getting confusing. You know, you have the iPhone 17, but the iOS version is like 9. You know, so if you get, heck, let's just call it the calendar year 2026. There's a former Labor Secretary Rice. There's your big plane. There's Howard Lutnick commenting about MSNBC and Trump has been continuing to tantalize Adam Shifty Schiff. And here we are. I'm looking at the live view of the radar over here. And I really don't. The panel is rounded out a little bit more. Let's move back a little bit. Yeah. Let's see if I can show you that. There it is. You see how that looks? There's a little squared off bottom. Whoops. No, I'm already looking at that one. Here it is. I can see it. Yeah, there we go. So now you can see how that one is a little more oval shaped. Let's see if we can pulse up there. Yeah, you see how the bottom here is on the right hand one, Clarencetown. So that's moved up just a little bit. The whole thing is condensed because now this is below Orlando, where this was up to Gainesville. So it's shrunk down a little bit in size. Still don't, I see slight. Yeah, you see where that L is for the low, the center of the low pressure zone. Let's add this and get rid of this. Now you see this right directly above the word Clarence town. There's an L, a red L. That is the center of the low pressure of this tropical depression. And if I look a little bit below that, there looks like right around in here, you probably can't see my cursor, but right around just circulating below the L, looks like the beginning of some counterclockwise rotation. That's the beginning of trouble. It's definitely starting to rotate, which it was not at 8 o'clock this morning when I first brought up the weather. So we'll see how that goes. So by tonight, that should be, becoming more and more of a closed. It looks like it's a little open on the circulatory cyclonic, right around the 3, 4, 5 o'clock on your clock. It's not quite coming back up around 5 o'clock. So by this evening, that should be connecting a little bit more. And then you see the clouds starting to get caught up in that rotation. Then you know you got something happening. And the faster it rotates, the lower the pressure becomes in the middle. It starts sucking up hot water from the Atlantic Ocean and creates a lot of energy that the storm absorbs. Meantime, we got the sunlight hitting the top of the clouds. That's how these storms gather energy from the heat in the water and from the sun. Um, the infrared energy from the sunlight. You put your hand out in the sun, palms up or palms down, you can feel the amount of energy, the heat that you can feel on your hand. You can imagine with hundreds of square miles of clouds, how much infrared energy is being absorbed by those clouds. You're wondering how these storms become so ferocious. That's how. Yep, that is how it happens. Little I know about meteorology, I know that much. Yep. All right. I've lasted here for an hour and 26 minutes. Hour and 27 minutes. Point. Yep. And I don't know what tomorrow will bring as far as me talking. I might get at you at like 10. I think Marilyn has a nail appointment. She usually has her nails. She usually does her nails when we have our housekeepers, and we add our housekeepers Wednesday, and that usually means she has nail day tomorrow. And if she has nail day tomorrow, I'll try to get on the air at 10 o'clock. I've been unreliable as to my talking to everybody. I have about 4,000 friends on Facebook and Facebook Live and YouTube Live and Twitter. And up to 170 people at a time could be listening to what Jimmy has to say. Sometimes very few, but up to 170, statistics tells me. So it's all kinds of different times of day and night. I try this to see what produces, and I remember getting on the air at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I had more business then than maybe now. But anyway, I wish you have a good afternoon and have a good weekend if I don't hear from you again. And if you care to partake, come on over and visit me at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.